So imagine an ancient text that is just so incredibly blunt and so mathematically precise that for thousands of years, politicians and scholars and, religious leaders have just quietly chosen to ignore it.
Right, because you just can't twist it to fit your own agenda.
Exactly. You can't build a neat little power structure around it. It literally gives you nowhere to hide. So today's deep dive is based on this really rare discourse by the mystic Osho, where he explores a text that is exactly like that. It's called the Ashtavakra Gita.
Yeah, and it's this bizarre, ancient, and honestly super dramatic dialogue between a really powerful king and a severely deformed but highly enlightened 12-year-old boy.
Right.
And our mission today is to figure out why this specific kind of obscure text is considered by the people who really study it to be the ultimate unadulterated truth. We're going to unpack the wild story of the boy who spoke and really dig into its most radical idea, which is that liberation or enlightenment or whatever you want to call it isn't this thing you work toward over multiple lifetimes. It's something that happens right now.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the source material sets up this really fascinating comparison right out of the gate. To understand what the Ashtavakra Gita is, you kind of have to look at what it isn't. And Osho compares it to a much more famous text, which is Krishna's Bhagavad Gita. Like, most people have at least heard of that one.
Right. The Bhagavad Gita is incredibly popular. But the source actually describes Krishna's approach as a khichdi.
Which is, it's like an Indian dish.
Exactly. It's a culinary term for a mixture or a compromise. The Bhagavad Gita is this highly poetic, very diplomatic text. And because it's so poetic, anyone who reads it can kind of find exactly what they want in it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, like a devotee finds a path of devotion, right? A politician finds a justification for action. An intellectual finds this really complex philosophy. It basically accommodates everybody's existing worldview.
It's like staring at clouds. If you look up and you really want to see an elephant, you're going to see an elephant.
Yes, that's it, exactly. In fact, the source compares it to a Rorschach ink blot test in psychology. You stare at these random ink splatters and your mind just projects its own internal contents onto the paper. People literally see what they're already conditioned to see. There's actually this brilliant story in the sources about the American philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson that captures this whole thing perfectly.
They're the neighbors.
Yeah. So a neighbor of his borrowed a book of Plato's writings, and when he brought it back, Emerson asked him, what he thought of it. And the neighbor just arrogantly replies, "Oh, it's fine. This Plato fellow and I have very similar views. In fact, I suspect he might have stolen some of my ideas."
From 2,000 years ago. I mean, that is just an incredible level of ego.
Totally. But that ego is exactly how we approach most philosophical texts. We just project our own minds onto them. We don't read them to be transformed. We read them to find a mirror that flatters us. We just want validation.
It sounds a bit like reading a daily horoscope. It's written vaguely enough that anyone reading it is like, wow, this applies directly to my very specific situation at work today.
Right.
But Ashtavakra doesn't play that game at all.
Not even a little bit. Ashtavakra is pure math. 2 + 2 = 4. There is no poetry to hide behind. There's no, diplomatic compromise meant to soothe your ego. There is zero room for personal interpretation. To understand Ashtavakra, you can't bring your politics or your preconditions into the room with you.
You have to leave all your baggage at the door.
Exactly. If you want to engage with his words, you have to leave yourself behind completely because you just can't project your ego onto a mathematical equation.
So, if a text is that brutally blunt, you really have to wonder about the person who delivered it, right? Because the origin story of Ashtavakra is wild, and it really sets the stage for why he pulls absolutely no punches.
It is a profound story, and it actually starts before he was even born. So while he's still in the womb, his father, who is this really prominent, very traditional scholar, is pacing around the house, reciting ancient scriptures out loud, just day after day. And suddenly, the unborn child speaks up from the womb.
Crazy.
Yeah, he tells his father to stop all the nonsense. He declares that true knowledge isn't found in memorizing words or reciting books or chanting verses. True knowledge is entirely within.
Okay, wait a minute. A fetus critiquing complex theology from the womb. If I'm listening to this right now, I'm thinking, is this biologically impossible? Or are we missing a massive metaphor here?
Well, what's fascinating here is that skepticism is exactly the right reaction, because ancient texts use these origin stories not as literal historical journalism, but as profound metaphors. The source points out that pretty much all major traditions have these seemingly impossible stories.
Like what?
Well, the Buddha is said to have taken 7 steps the exact moment he was born. Lao Tzu was supposedly born as an 80-year-old man with a full head of white hair. Zarathustra is said to have laughed out loud the second he left the room.
So they're actively trying to break our literal historical way of thinking.
Yes, and they are pointing to the specific, very radical truth. The flower is always inherently present in the seed. The enlightenment of the Buddha was present at his birth. The profound wisdom of Lao Tzu was there from day one.
Right, it's not something you build up over time.
Exactly. These stories exist to prove that absolute truth isn't something you just slowly accumulate, like gathering facts for an encyclopedia over 80 years. It's an inherent potential within you from the very beginning. So the fetus, speaking from the womb, is really just a metaphorical way of saying that Ashtavakra's pure knowing didn't come from external conditioning or going to school. It was this explosion of his innate consciousness.
But of course, the father didn't see it that way. His ego was entirely wrapped up in being this highly respected scholar. So being corrected by his own unborn child just enrages him. He actually curses his own son.
Yeah, it's brutal.
He curses him to be born with 8 severe physical deformities, which is where the name comes from. Ashtavakra literally translates to 8 bends. He's born completely crooked, just this mangled body.
And that physical form ends up becoming the ultimate test for the society around him. Because what happens when someone possessing pure innate truth, but wrapped in a really deeply unconventional package, collides with a society that is just obsessed with status and appearances?
Well, we see exactly what happens when Ashtavakra turns 12. This leads to what has to be one of the most dramatic showdowns in the history of philosophy. King Janak, the ruler of the land, has organized this massive high-stakes debate. He's gathered all the elite scholars, the priests, the intellectuals, and the prize for the winner is just staggering. It's 1,000 cows, with every single cow having horns plated in solid gold.
Just a total fortune. It would make anyone a king in their own right.
Exactly. And Ashtavakra's father, the same father who cursed him, by the way, is competing, and he is losing badly.
He is on the verge of total public humiliation. So this severely deformed 12-year-old boy, Ashtavakra, walks right into the center of the royal court to save his father. Just imagine the tension in that room. You've got the absolute elite of society gathered in their finest robes, taking themselves incredibly seriously, and they see this boy hobbling in, bent in 8 places, just moving awkwardly.
And the entire court just erupts into laughter. They literally think it's a joke.
But then Ashtavakra starts laughing, and he laughs even louder than all of them combined.
I love that. The sheer audacity of a 12-year-old laughing at the entire royal court. It just completely shatters the dynamic of the room. King Janak is stunned. He looks at the boy and says, "I know why they're laughing, but why are you laughing?" And Ashtavakra looks at the king and delivers just a devastating insult. He says, "I am laughing because truth is being decided in an assembly of cobblers."
That is such a powerful moment. And that specific word, cobblers, in the original language, it's shamar. It's this brilliant, cutting philosophical critique. Because what is a cobbler? A cobbler is an expert in skin, in leather. They look at a piece of leather and they know everything about its quality. Ashtavakra is pointing out that these so-called elite spiritual masters are only capable of seeing his physical leather, his deformed body.
They're completely blind to the radiant, pure consciousness inside him.
Exactly. They are judging the eternal based entirely on the temporary wrapper.
It's like judging the vastness of the sky based on the shape of the window you're looking through. Like, if the window is crooked, you don't say the sky itself is crooked. And Ashtavakra actually uses this exact kind of imagery with the king. He says, a crooked temple doesn't make the sky crooked. A broken pot doesn't break the space inside it. My body is bent, but I am not.
And the impact of that on King Janak is immediate. Janak is a very sincere seeker of truth, and hearing a 12-year-old boy casually dismantle the arrogance of the entire intellectual establishment just shocks him into acute awareness. He realizes he's been hosting a circus, so he completely stops the debate. The very next morning, the king actually goes out, finds Ashtavakra on the road, gets off his horse, and falls flat at the boy's feet in total surrender.
Wow.
Yeah, he invites the boy back to the palace to ask him the ultimate questions.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this brings us to the actual core of the Ashtavakra Gita. The king seats this mangled 12-year-old on a golden throne, and he asks him the question at the heart of all human searching, which is, how does one attain knowledge, liberation, and detachment?
And Ashtavakra's response is this radical departure from almost every other spiritual tradition in the world. Usually, if you ask a master how to get liberated, they hand you a massive to-do list. The source points out that masters like Patanjali or Mahavira, they prescribe lifetimes of rules. You must do the 8 limbs of yoga. You have to follow strict diets, practice nonviolence, detach slowly over thousands of reincarnations.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Right, but Ashtavakra bypasses all of that entirely. He tells the king that liberation happens adhunaiva.
Adhunaiva. Which means immediately, right
Yeah.
now, in this exact second. But I mean, how is that even psychologically possible? If I'm super stressed or angry or I'm just obsessed with my career, I can't just snap my fingers and be enlightened.
Well, Ashtavakra argues that the delay is actually an illusion created by your own mind. He tells the king to drop the physical senses like poison, because chasing sensory pleasure is just a slow process of dying. Instead, embrace forgiveness, compassion, and truth. And then he lays out the foundational mechanism of his pure math. He says, you are not the earth or the water or the fire or the air. You are the witness of it all. The Sanskrit word is sakshi.
The witness. Meaning you belong to no caste, no stage of life. You aren't a student or a CEO or a parent. Beneath all of those roles, you were just the observer.
Exactly. And to understand the mechanics of this, the source uses a really brilliant analogy. So think of your life as a train journey. You are on the train and you pass through a station called childhood. You see it, you experience it, and then it's gone. Then you pass through youth, then old age. The fundamental psychological mistake we make is identifying with the station. We pull into the station of youth and say, I am young. We pull into old age and panic, saying, oh no, I am old. But Ashtavakra says, you are just the passenger witnessing the stations go by. You are the eternal observer that remains totally constant while the scenery of your body and mind changes around you.
That reframes everything, actually. If you're angry, you aren't the anger. The anger is just a station you are temporarily passing through. If you can observe the anger instead of becoming it, it completely loses its power over you.
That is the core of it. And it goes even deeper when Ashtavakra applies this witness state to human desire. I mean, we are a society obsessed with success and achievement. But Ashtavakra, through the source's analysis, points out this profound paradox. The intense desire for success actually stems from a deep, unrecognized inner fear of failure. You only desperately crave success if you are terrified of being a nobody.
So all that ambition is actually just a defense mechanism.
Exactly. Similarly, begging the world for respect, wanting titles, awards, social media validation, that is actually a public confession of your own inner disrespect.
Wow.
Right. If you truly respected yourself, if you knew your own nature as the eternal witness, you wouldn't need a single person to validate you. True contentment isn't getting everything you want. It's recognizing that the observer within you is already whole. It just doesn't need external attachments to exist.